Now, a word about animals on the Mark Thompson Show.
And to share a word about animals this day, Karen Dawn, everyone. She is the creator of DawnWatch, which you can find on Facebook and also find it across the World Wide Web. Just Google it, DawnWatch. It's the daily animal world news watch. And you've been busy. I've been getting your advisories. Tell me what you would most like to focus on.
You know, I was so pleased to see you mention Cesar Chavez Day today. Because just yesterday, my friend Eric Mills, who's head of Action for Animals in Oakland, had a letter published in the newspaper up there. And he quoted a letter that he received from Cesar Chavez a few decades ago now, I think. And I sent it over to Albert, who did tell me he managed to get it, because as usual, Mark, I'm going to see if you might read some of these lines, because it's so pertinent to what we're going to talk about today. And of course, it was just Cesar Chavez Day yesterday.
Well, as usual, I didn't know about this, and as usual, I'll just stumble through it. Here's an excerpt from a letter Chavez wrote to Action for Animals in 1990. Kindness and compassion toward all living things is a mark of a civilized society. Conversely, cruelty, whether it is directed against human beings or against animals, is not the exclusive province of any one culture or community of people. Racism, economic deprival, dogfighting and cockfighting, bullfighting and rodeos are cut from the same fabric, violence. Only when we have become nonviolent toward all life will we have learned to live well ourselves. Wow, that's quite the quote from him. Jeez.
Amen.
Yeah.
And I think
Amen
I'm going to
indeed.
dedicate this segment today to Eric Mills of Action for Animals, because he is devoted, I would say, more than any other issue to rodeo. And what I want to chat about today is pretty closely related to that. And that is that last night, and I had something else intended, by the way, to talk about today. We were going to talk about Flaco, but, you know, we've been there. And the main thing I was going to say was that indeed it did come out that he didn't fly into a building. He dropped off some perch, and he was loaded with rodenticide, rat poison, and also with the pigeon virus. So anybody really interested in that can look at our last chat about
Yeah, but
that.
that's worth noting. Thank you, because it seems as though he was poisoned at minimum. Yeah.
Yeah, rat poison. And
Rat poison, right.
we've got to talk about that some other time. But this morning I woke up to news on the online about last night's 60 Minutes segment, and a fair bit of distress through the animal advocacy community about that. Some of your folks might have seen it, and I'm going to guess that most people who saw it from the general public wouldn't even notice that anything was wrong. And that's because we are so inured as a society to the horrendous treatment of animals that we don't even notice it. And, you know, sometimes we talk about the fact that, you know, a lot of our colleagues in the animal rights movement, they want everybody to go vegan. And of course, you and I know the joys of vegan eating, and it's fabulous and delicious and healthy. But if we can't even agree that we shouldn't be abusing animals for our entertainment, and in this second, I'm going to talk about horses. How on earth are we going to get people to agree that it's time to stop eating chickens? It's not going to happen, I don't think. I do everything I can to encourage vegan eating. But I want to talk about something where I hope we can all find common ground. So last night on 60 Minutes, they covered the Indian relay, which is like kind of rodeo. And the photo that you see up there was one little second in this 14-minute segment. Basically, Bill Whitaker introduced the segment as the most exciting and inspiring thing you've ever seen. And, you know, 14 minutes, it isn't this fabulous, but if you're looking closely, or if you're particularly attuned to these kinds of things the way that I am and you are, Mark, but I think most people aren't, you know, you notice the kind of thing in the photo there where, they mentioned that it's a dangerous sport for men and animals. Well, for the horses, it's not a sport. They didn't choose to be there. And it's particularly dangerous for them because, if they fall over and they break a leg, they get killed. So it's horrifying for them, it's frightening for them, and it's incomparably more dangerous for them than it is for humans. Yes, humans might die during this thing, but horses die all the time in horse racing and rodeos. And anybody who doesn't know about general horse racing should go to horseracingwrongs.org and learn about a couple of horses per week put down in regular racing. But this particular Indian relay, it was presented as a fluff piece, like it's just fabulous. So ask Albert to share a few of these photos. This one here, the guy's, about to get on the horse. And the second he gets on, we hear whack, whack, as he's beating down on the horse, and off it takes. And, this is great fun. And it's not. And there's a few other scenes. And again, in the whole 14 minutes that CBS chose to show us, there weren't lots of these scenes. But there's other scenes where you see, there's one where these three gals are coming in. Here's the children's version that Albert's showing us now. You see the size of this kid and the size of this pony. Besides the fact that we are teaching children at such a young age that animals are not to be respected, does anybody think this little pony's having a good day? And, later on at the end of the show, they show two kids on one of these ponies. So and here Albert's showing us some more video photos. And I want to remind people again, and I'll ask Albert to leave this shot up here for a moment, but this was not a CBS special about animal abuse. This was a 14-minute, 60-minute special on how fabulous this Indian relay is. But if we look with different eyes, we just see, as I said earlier, what we've become inured to as a society with what we do to animals. Here we have the horses on the reservation when they're not out being whipped in these races. This is how they're getting exercise. And if anybody's seen photos of the wild Mustangs running across the fields with their families, and then you see them on these reservations.
We lost her mic, it seems. Did we lose her mic, or is it just me?
Yeah, Karen, your mic has dropped.
Your mic has dropped, Karen. I don't know if you can hear. But I was just going to ask her about the Indian thing. So this is it's Native American culture. They sell the whole thing. This is it. Russ was saying, so they were selling the whole thing as part of Native American culture. It's a weird thing because the native peoples in America and oftentimes worldwide, they had a relationship with the animals around them and with the land around them that was quite extraordinary, right? It wasn't reflective of exploitation generally. It was usually more cognizant of a relationship that had to sort of coexist and celebrated coexistence. And that's not to say they didn't, hunt animals, et cetera, but even in the hunting of animals, native peoples in America and beyond, they celebrated the animal that was slain. It was oftentimes a almost religious rite that they would go through with the creature that they had just slain.
And often used all parts of the animal. It wasn't like hunting for sport where you just take the head and put it on a wall, right? A whole different situation.
Yeah. So I come at it with the native people's view toward animals and disposition toward the environment and their environment and the animals in that environment in kind of a sympathetic way, even as I don't really countenance the exploitation of these creatures. Now, to this specific, again, Karen's mic cut out, so you're having to listen to me a little bit, but I would, this is an abomination. I think the one thing that we can agree on, and again, I do the show, we do the show every day. I never mention vegan, whatever. I mean, I never. I mean, I'll do it when Karen's on, but otherwise, or to make fun of maybe a certain situation where I couldn't get somebody to eat, but I'm not trying to, I know it's a long shot. The only reason I'm vegan is for ethical reasons. I just didn't want to be part of that world, but I'm not trying to beat anybody over the head or judge anybody else. I'm really not. But so this has nothing to do with that. This is my point. Forget about that, the way you eat, vegan, blah, blah, blah. This has to do with just understanding right and wrong. I think beating the crap out of creatures and exploiting them for your own enjoyment is unconscionable. And so I'm against SeaWorld and I'm against these rodeos. Rodeos are absolutely cruel to the creatures that are in them. I have a friend who's a 4-time rodeo champion, and he left rodeo. He said, I couldn't take the cruelty anymore. He said, I couldn't take how cruel it was to the creatures. So we know it. It's indisputable. And so when 60 Minutes does this piece, to be fair, they call it America's most extreme sport. And to be fair, then it rises to the level of 60 Minutes coverage. That's why they were doing the story. But as Karen suggests, they do the story all happy and isn't it wild to see these people compete? Well, the people aren't competing as much as these creatures who they're exploiting are competing. Don't, again, mean to be the adult at the party, but it really is worth noting that this is pure exploitation and it's immoral in my judgment. Go ahead, Albert. What is
Yeah, we'll try to get Karen back on right now. See.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, and now people.
Mark,
just,
I don't need long. You know what? It's funny how things just work out, because I don't know exactly when my microphone cut out, but then I realized it was cut out, and then I heard you talking, and you are so articulate on these issues, and you don't usually talk about them. So, and you'll go at it. We're almost like good cop, bad cop. You'll go at it at a level that I won't go at it is, and talk about how disgusting it is. So I just love that my microphone cut out and that we got to hear what you think. It's the universe knew what it was doing. I did want to make one point before we leave this issue. I don't know where it cut out, and I don't know if you heard me talking about the Sioux man who they interviewed. And it was very, very touching. And he talked about that he used to be ashamed of being Indian. He was never proud of being Indian. And Bill Whitaker asked him why. And he says, well, it's, the alcoholism and the drug abuse and the suicide rate is 4 or 5 times that it is in the rest of the world. And he was never proud of being Indian until they started with these relays. And my heart broke for so many reasons. I have to say the answer to those very real problems is not animal abuse. But I was immediately and also teaching those kids to abuse animals and also putting them in danger. But I found myself thinking of the most beautiful film, which I urge folks to watch, and it's not about animals. It's called White Might, and it's called White Might, Meeting the Enemy. And a young Iranian woman filmmaker goes and talks to neo-Nazis and she interviews them. And it's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And actually, Gene Bauer from Farm Sanctuary introduced me to this film. And the line he always used discussing the film was that hurt people hurt people. And anybody who's interested in this topic, who'd like to see a young Iranian girl go talk to a neo-Nazi, should watch this film. But the reason I thought about it when I watched this 60-minute segment and heard from that Sioux man was hurt people also hurt animals. And we know that kids who are abused are more likely to abuse animals. And here we have a situation where these people who feel so powerless, the answer they're given is to take it out on animals. And it's not the answer, and it's not right. And I did my loving kindness meditation this morning on these people because I was filled with rage when I saw these horses being whipped. And then I just realized they're not trying to do the wrong thing. They're not thinking about it. And most people watching this segment wouldn't even have noticed what the horses are going through. And I just want to say, can we stop not noticing and just start realizing that these animals feel pain, not just when they're being whipped, when they're taken from their families, when they're being exercised at the end of what looks like a clothesline. This is not a life. This isn't right. And before we start talking about going vegan, can we just talk about our relationships with other species and this idea that humans own the world and own every creature in it? We have to rethink that.
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to be this evolved species, and the reality is this is pure exploitation, and it lacks all humanity, and it gets even worse in some of these other situations. But Karen, thank you again. It's DawnWatch, the daily animal world news watch, and it is a great resource that you can sign up for, and will ping your email box and just tell you what stuff's going on. And if you have an interest, there are some revelations along the way. I didn't see the 60 Minutes piece, so I thank you for that. Thanks, Karen. We'll talk to you next time. Karen Dawn, everybody.